What's up, everyone? This is Jacob Minig, host of Therapist Talks. And today we are going to be doing Why I Quit Being a Therapist Part 2. So, 6 reasons. And like I said, we'll be continuing off of yesterday's video, which now we're getting into reason number 4. All right, let's get this set up.
So, another reason that I quit being a therapist is I had very little collegial support. I kind of mentioned this already, but basically, I was not well supported at all. Yeah, I did supervision. I did years and years of supervision as a psychotherapist, but that wasn't supportive. Mostly it was like, it was really good training to learn how to play the game, to learn how to say, if I tell the supervisor this, they're going to punish me or punish my clients or harm me or harm my clients in this, and this way. So I had to learn what I could share and what I couldn't share. And that was a very unpleasant, frustrating process. It was disgusting, basically. But learning how to play the game was actually very, very useful to me because it translated directly in me being able to help my clients learn how to play the game, especially clients that were getting sucked into the deeper mental health system, into psychiatry, into mental hospitals. And basically, for those clients to learn how to function outside of psychiatry, how to get out of the mental hospitals, out of the hooks of their psychiatrist, they had to learn how to play the game too. And often the skills that I learned were very, very useful to them. And a lot of it, yeah, people who've been in the mental health system a lot as clients learn these things. Don't say trigger things. Like if you tell people you're suicidal, maybe you don't really want to follow through to kill yourself. But even if you start talking about suicidality, a lot of therapists and psychiatrists, they're trigger happy. They'll send someone right to the hospital. Well,
Yeah, that's a good point you just made just recently when a client expresses to you that they're having thoughts of unaliving themselves or they want to unalive themselves. There's a lot of steps to take before you should take an immediate action. 'Cause I can't tell you how many times I've heard clients or followers of my like other social media tell me they don't feel comfortable being honest with their therapist because if they're truly and fully honest about their thoughts, their intents, or their behaviors, they'll get sent to the hospital against their will. So it's a really tough situation because, again, as a therapist, you want to protect your client and do what's best for them, keep them safe, but also you want to honor that autonomy and the therapeutic relationship with the client. So that's why, again, safety planning is always very important, but just showing the client that you're there for them, that you care about them and you respect them and so forth. So I don't want to get too much into this because these would be great topics for another video. But just going back to what he also said earlier about supervision. So I don't know what he means by his type of supervision because there's supervision obviously to get your mental health license, and then there's a kind of supervision where you do after. But again, I don't call it supervision once you have your license. I call it more like consultation, which again, it's funny because I see my mental health supervisor for my consultations now just because of how much I really care for her, really respect her. I mean, she's helped me so much in this field. That's why I continue to see her, but I call it more consultation. But it literally is the same thing. And he was talking about how he, I guess, would be afraid to tell a supervisor something because they might get triggered or they might give him, I don't know, bad advice or bad supervision. And he doesn't want to harm his client or put his client in bad situations. My thought right there is if you're too afraid to like tell your supervisor something, whatever, that's not the right supervisor for you. And I know a lot of people are in situations where they work at an organization and they get their supervision paid for free, which I get that. That's like another motivator to stay with a particular supervisor that's, let's say, hypothetically not very good. But again, you really have to think about the long haul about your career, how you want to benefit from it, how you want to get educated. And that's why I would really support that therapist to leave that supervisor if they are really afraid of asking that supervisor for advice or information on certain things. Yeah, that's not a good supervisor in my opinion, or maybe that's just not the right one for you. And then getting into lack of support. Yeah, especially in private practice. And I don't know if he's eventually going to get to this, but yeah, it could be a very, very lonely place. And I've talked about this in other videos, but yeah, um, when you're working at a community mental health facility, or if you were, let's say, working at a treatment center or whatnot, I can imagine you just working with a lot of other colleagues, staff members, and then you can like vent and get support from them. But yeah, private practice for the most part, you're by yourself. I mean, for me, I'm purely by myself. I don't have any like assistants or like a receptionist or whatnot. It's just me doing everything. And yeah, you have people like in other offices around you or suites around you, whatever. But yeah, you rarely see them, and yeah, you really have to reach out for your support and so forth. So yeah, I can definitely relate to him when it comes to that. So
I learned the same thing from my supervisors. If I was really open with them, like I was supposed to be, like I was trained to be about what was going on with my clients, they were less supportive of me, less supportive of my clients. They wanted to just do to my clients what they did to their own clients, which was send them to the hospital,
red
force them to
flag.
get on
Yeah.
medication evaluations, kick them out of clinics, say you need a higher standard of care. Basically be
Yeah, it's just funny because, like I said, every therapist has a different route to their career, and it just seems like this guy was put into, or he chose to go more of like the medical slash therapist route. Just because so far in this video or in these videos, I've seen him or heard him talk about like medication this, medication that, him being influenced to push medications on his clients and whatnot. And I really did not have that experience. But again, I came from like the treatment center setting. Yeah, I did some arms work, CTSS work, some crisis work, but yeah, different experiences.
incredibly untherapeutic. And so what I learned is that I couldn't talk openly with my colleagues about what was going on. I could be friendly with my colleagues. It was always a good idea, especially when I was working at clinics, to get along with them. But and even with the little bit that I did tell my colleagues, a lot of them figured out, oh, this guy actually can work with really troubled people. And they didn't want to work with really troubled people. Most people we wanted to get rid of the really troubled people, so they would send them to me. So yeah, I had good relationships with colleagues, but I was very unsupported. The end result with that was that professionally, I was very isolated. Now, I know I shared this at times. I'd feel in more intimate moments, I would share this with colleagues, and often I was burned when I shared it. They said, oh, you're professionally isolated. That's your problem, as if there was something wrong with me. And I was being pathologized. In many ways, the same way my clients were being pathologized by the mental health system. There were a lot of parallel processes going on. But what I learned is, I really can't share with them. Now, where did I get my support? I got my support, I would say, from four different places. One, I got my support from my friends. I had a few friends who I could really talk about what was going on with. I couldn't really talk so much in specific detail about what was going on with my clients because of confidentiality, but I could
Mhm.
talk about my feelings and I could talk about certain things as long as it wouldn't come back to my clients in any way. And I found that very helpful. What I found also is that a lot of my friends who were not therapists at all actually had a lot more common sense. I think the mental health system burned the common sense out of people. It ripped it away from them and it made people have a lot less common sense. I've also
I agree with that. I completely agree with that, especially in my internship where you just deal with so much stress and criticism from, like, let's say, supervisors, directors. Not all the time, but a good amount of the times. Again, I had this one didactic teacher that was an older lady, and she was extremely judgmental. And when I was doing my didactic supervision with her, it was just a really bad experience. She had major countertransference with me. And it almost got to the point where I was probably gonna have to leave her, but we ended up sticking it out. But again, I digress. Where a lot of times, superiors in this field, they do a lot to like shame you in a lot of ways. So it makes you think that you're not even a good person, or you honestly God do not know what's left from right. So I can definitely relate to him, and it's just really sad. It's just almost like your autonomy is taken away from you. Just I don't know, because others have so much power over you and whatnot. And yeah, he's getting into support, family, friends, and obviously, like you can tell him like situations, but you can't break any HIPAA information regarding the client, of course. But also, like you want to almost protect them from like the trauma that you heard. So obviously, it's not appropriate to tell you them every single detail, but to vent to them emotionally of what's going on. And then that's where like supervisors come in handy, colleagues, like fellow therapists, social workers, that can lend an ear to you and kind of give you, in a way, like non-supervised supervision in a sense. But Yeah, which but again, it really creates a good, healthy support system for you to vent your needs and sharpen your therapeutic skills.
Also seen that with some people who really had a natural gift for being a therapist, and they went through all the training to become therapists, and the end result is they became worse therapists as the result of all their professional training once they got their license. But yeah, I got support. I got a lot more emotional support from friends. That was the first thing. The second is, it's sad to say, but it's the truth, is in my therapy with clients, a lot of my clients gave me support back. Now, I didn't ask for it, but what they gave me was mirroring. When they realized that I was actually helping them, they realized that I was actually listening to them, caring about them, and really being useful to them, often in ways that no one had ever been useful to them before, they turned around and they were like, "Thank you. My God, you're helping me." They were so appreciative, and they mirrored me back. They often, I couldn't believe how many clients told me, "How do you do this all day? This has got to be horrible to sit and to listen to my stuff. I feel so bad. Should I come less?" People like, even though it was helping them, they wanted to come less because they knew it was really painful to listen to. And I tried to be
Well, you want them to come less in a sense of they're getting better, they're healing, they're developing coping tools regarding their mental health, trauma, and whatnot. That's like the natural progression of therapy. Like usually when I start therapy, it's weekly, then it goes to bi-weekly, and then monthly, and then we'll take a break and whatnot. Yeah, I mean that's a great thing. It's always nice to feel appreciated, like when a client tells you, "Oh, hey, Jake, you've really helped me this and that," or they send you friendly emails like, "Hey, thank you so much for helping me through treatment and helping me work with my probation officer." Like those are great feelings. That is what like makes this field worth it, is that rewarding feeling. But interesting enough, like we're actually trained like not to necessarily care about that, but like you could go majority of your career and not know how many people you've impacted because again, we're trained like not to care about like I don't know what's the word I'm thinking about, but like trusting the work that we do and like not necessarily like, needing like great feedback from clients and whatnot. Because there could be years going down the line and you might not have known how much you really helped a client. But again, it's always a good feeling, but we're not necessarily trained just to like live off that good feeling or having the expectation of always feeling like appreciated by every client. And yeah, but I can understand like what he's saying, where how it's so emotionally healthy and it feels good to feel appreciated.
tough. And I said, "No, no, 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 of course not. I can handle it." But the truth is, it was difficult, but I really still did appreciate the mirroring. And it was intuitive mirroring that the clients gave me. They mirrored me as I was mirroring them. So it really was a two-way relationship in a way that I never learned about that in training. Nobody ever taught me that was true. The third place that I got a lot of support was, and this was more early on, later I got less, but I got it through reading about psychology. I also got it by reading about novels. But I remember like Alice Miller, the psychologist Alice Miller, she gave me a lot of support. I also got support by reading about other, critical psychiatry therapists and different parts of critical.
Yeah, I'm not much of a reader, to be honest with you guys. Most of it, I mean, I read like obviously like books to get through grad school, not ever like the whole book, but just to get through assignments and projects. I will say this: the one book that I actually read fully in grad school, the only book I've ever read cover to cover was A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. A phenomenal, amazing story, everyone. He really was a huge part of the existentialism movement and therapeutic interventions. He developed logotherapy, great stuff, but I digress. But yeah, so not necessarily where I got my support in books, but I could imagine books being really helpful too. Um, so let's move on to reason number five.
So a fifth reason that I quit being a therapist was the responsibility.
Okay.
I think people don't talk about this too much in the mental health field. And for me, it was something that was one of the hardest things about being a therapist, especially a therapist with people who had a lot of really serious stuff going on in their lives. But what it is in terms of responsibility, what is it that's so hard? Okay, first, there's just the responsibility of being the point person in that person's life, being the one who is the recipient for hearing the horror of what they've gone
Yeah.
through. That's an incredible responsibility because,
Mhm.
that person, when they leave the therapy session and they go home and they think about it for a week, I'm on their mind a lot. And that's an incredible responsibility. It's like I had to be really careful about what I said. People, especially people who have been horribly harmed by their childhoods, by life in their adulthoods, and by the mental health field and by therapists.
Yeah, that's crazy, but very, very true. There's a lot of responsibility, and just like I said earlier in the video, just staying with the client in their moments, in their darkest moments when they're being vulnerable, and you have to understand, like you may be one of the very, very few people they've told that story to as well. So also, less is more. Sometimes when in therapy, speaking too much can be a really bad thing when someone's pouring out their trauma to you. So just be with them in the moment and make sure they're okay. And yeah, it's very cool that he said that because I never thought about that. How a client could be having our session in their mind a week straight, just thinking about like what happened in that room or in that office as they were talking about their trauma or their issues. So that's really cool by Daniel to make that remark there. That's not something I never really thought about. And yeah, you're right. Like we do have a lot of responsibility in the sense of like a client's mental and emotional safety because of again like the trauma that's all involved in their stories. So good point.
They can be pretty harmed by a wrongly used word, an inadvertent phrase, a lack of sensitivity, or my mind would wander for a minute and they would catch it. People would catch it. And it was
Yeah.
like, I felt an incredible responsibility to be focused, to be present, to not drift, to not be thinking about.
And never try to yawn in therapy too, by the way. A client could find that really disrespectful. Not all the time. Um, because there's times where like you're not even tired, but you still kind of yawn. So I always kind of like protect my mouth like this sometimes. And it's not out of disrespect. So and you always want to try to avoid it, but then you have some clients who actually have a good relationship with you and they'll be even like saying like Jake, you can yawn, it's okay, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm good, I'm good. So yeah, always try to be respectful of the client's time and the space that they're in.
Hmm, tonight I want to go see a movie. It's like, no, be there. And
Yeah.
then also at the end of the day, it's not like, oh, therapists say, I hear this commonly, oh, you're supposed to leave therapy at home. You're supposed to leave what happens with your
Easier said than done. And that's what they say in all jobs, corporate accounting, being attorney, factory, like leave your work at home. Easier said than done.
clients at home. You're supposed to have your own freedom afterward at night. You're supposed to have your own evening. Yeah, right. It's like, come on. When people share about horrible things, you really think you're supposed to be able to leave it behind? Ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I don't think you can leave it behind. Some of the stuff that I heard, lots of it. It's like you don't just leave that behind. It would come out in my dreams. It would come out. It would come out sometimes first thing in the morning. Or just think about it. Painful stuff. The other
Never had that. Never dreamed about a client or a client situation before. But yeah, and I think you might be getting into like self-care too. Like sometimes like working out's really good, eating healthy, or taking a walk after a session or after work for a therapist could be really beneficial or beneficial for anyone who has a stressful career and whatnot. Just getting out of the office, getting away from the screen time of a laptop or whatnot, and just clearing your head too is good. And again, setting boundaries with clients and the amount of clients you take too, so you don't get burnt out on the caseload.
thing is, I had this happen. I took very, very few vacations away from New York City when I was a therapist, mostly because I was so into the work. Also, it's like I didn't take a lot of time off. But when I did, I learned there was no such thing as a real vacation for me. It wasn't a holiday. I'd be thinking about people. I'd be checking my
Mhm.
mail, or even a few times I was out of range of being able to check my phone or check my voice messages. And it was like I worked with a lot of people who had suicidal feelings, sometimes suicidal actions.
So again, that's not our responsibility to take on in a sense. So a lot of therapists have different like policies and procedures when it comes to this. Where like let's say hypothetically you're a therapist, you work 9 to 6, whatever, and your policy, and then you would explain this to your client. But regarding your policy, it's like, hey, I don't run a crisis service, this or that. So I'm not going to be available to you 24/7. However, you can inform them and let them know of resources that you can call if you are going through a crisis, like the crisis hotline 988 is a great one. Give them cards or brochures to emergency crisis hotlines or services. So when they're not with you, they can go and pull up the card and call those organizations. and whatnot. But some therapists don't necessarily have that. So again, I haven't seen the rest of this video, but he's kind of getting into he's thinking about like his clients on vacation. I've never been that quite like that bad. But however, last vacation I took with my family and whatnot, I would check my email every once in a while, if I were getting new intakes, and I did get some like new intakes. And maybe I shouldn't have done this, but then I kind of scheduled with them when I got back from vacation. But like, okay, cool. 'Cause I was excited. I got new clients and whatnot, so that was good. So those are boundary issues I kind of need to work on, because you want to try to shut that off. But what he's getting to, he's like worried about his clients like mental health when he's not working with them or on vacation, and worrying about their suicide ideations. I think that's just I understand it's very human of him, but it could really be a high cause for burnout too. So, but anyways, I digress. I'll let him finish.
And it was like, I felt like I bore a lot of responsibility. I feel
Sure.
a lot of the blame for that really is on the mental health system. There's this idea that therapists somehow are supposed to totally be the catch-all that prevents people from killing themselves. Well,
Yeah, yeah, I get that. But that's also up to the client or the therapist to again set healthy boundaries with their client. And I don't think that has anything to do with the mental health system. Yeah, that might be like a societal thing where like all therapists are in charge of all their clients' mental health 24/7, so that, but that's not the case. We have lives too, and we need to set those boundaries because if we're burnt out, well, one, we're not mirroring healthy skills. We're supposed to be teaching clients healthy skills, setting healthy boundaries. But how can we do that if we're not respecting our boundaries with them? Right. So that gets into the mirroring and not taking too much responsibility on for themselves. So again, really utilizing these resources. Again, I'll give Daniel a break on this video because this video is at least 10 years old. So there wasn't a crisis hotline 988, but I'm sure there was certain crisis services in that city that he lived in or that his clients lived in. But yeah.
to me, that's ridiculous. People have responsibility for their own lives, but the mental health system, with the rules of what it means to be a therapist, puts a lot of pressure on therapists. They can get in lots and lots of trouble if somebody tries to kill themselves or heaven forbid does kill themselves and the
Mhm.
therapist hasn't taken all appropriate actions to stop them. Therapists are supposed to use force to stop people from killing themselves. They're supposed to call 911. They're supposed to hospitalize people. They're supposed to force people to go to psychiatrists to get meds. All these things that
Yeah, I strongly disagree with all that. I get what he's saying, but no, that's just way too much responsibility, and that's why there's lawyers, attorneys that work with healthcare professionals that they could help you put information like this in a policy so you're not held responsible for, God forbid, a client harms themselves or unalives themselves. Which again, we try to prevent that, but again, there's only so much we can do. That's why safety planning is very, very important when you're working with a client who is like highly psychosis or highly traumatized, who may have a history of suicide ideations, self-harm. So that's why you want to get a good solid safety plan. So in that safety plan, they know their coping skills, uh, resources like emotional mental health resources, crisis hotline resources, like their support system where they can call when they do get triggered and so forth. So that's set in place. So yeah, to better help them. Yeah, but that's just again, like I'm saying, that's too much responsibility.
therapists are responsible to do that. To me, like actually many of them are very irresponsible. In all those years I was a therapist, I never actually called 911 on a client. I never got somebody forcibly hospitalized. I did have some people voluntarily choose on their own volition to go to the hospital to
And that's a great thing that Daniel actually mentioned there too. Going back to like, let's say a client is saying they're in a dangerous situation, they feel like unaliving themselves. Is the answer is not like in a way forcing them to go to 911. So Daniel made a phenomenal point. You want to empathize with what the client is going through, be there for them in the moment, and showing them that you really care about them. And then that's a major plus if you can like get them to actually do that themselves, knowing that it's the best thing for them to get hospitalized in that moment, and then you being with them as a support system through that process. That's a golden example right there. It's very important that Daniel mentioned that. So I think that's the optimal thing we as therapists want to do or work towards as a goal when a crisis or when a client is going through a crisis like that.
go to an emergency room if they felt really suicidal or had other things going on, but it was never me pushing them. And often it was like I would be the devil's advocate saying, well, why don't you try something else? You haven't tried this, and this before you go to the hospital. There's certainly lots of alternatives that you can try that haven't been exploited, but some people wanted to go, and I feel like that's certainly their right. And the same thing with medication. Some people wanted to take medication, and I feel totally that's a person's right, though I feel it's my responsibility to say, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Do you know the side effects? Do you know the dangers of this? Maybe you could try other things, blah, 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 blah. But again, those are big responsibilities to take. But I think the main one also is that it's just that fear that if something goes wrong with one of my clients, I'm going to get blamed for it. And I was
Yeah, I get what he's saying. There's like the emotional side of like your client dying by suicide, which I cannot imagine how therapists would feel. That would be devastating. But on top of that, you have the legal side of that family suing you as a therapist, saying like you should have protected him too. So it really is like a double whammy that one could go through. So a really really tough situation.
like, when I quit being a therapist, man, that freedom that I got just to be away from that incredible responsibility. So this brings me to my sixth and last reason that I quit being a therapist. And this actually may be as important as all the other ones put together. I became interested in other stuff. I wanted to move on with my life. I realized, I have interest in other things aside from just sitting in an office listening to trauma and helping people work through
Yeah.
their trauma, helping people grieve. I started to want to make movies full time. I started to want to travel. I wanted to go and hitchhike around the world again. I hadn't done.
Getting into social media. I know that's what a lot of therapists are now doing. Now only for like a personal like hobby reason, but it's like a additional revenue source too to make more money. So yeah, Daniel's getting into some good points too. I really felt that strongly about that when I was a exercise science major as an undergrad. And when I graduated, I tried to do the personal training for a little bit. That didn't work out. So it's been over a year, and I kind of told myself, all right, I'm ready for like something new, something different that I could actually have a career in. So that's what actually motivated me to go to graduate school, to be a therapist, amongst some other things too. But yeah, it's just something different. And I know, like, even like right before graduate school, I was just super excited. I had the books ready. I was already like completing some of my first class's homework assignments before even class even started, just because I was so excited to get into a different field, try something new and different. And so, yeah, I could definitely resonate with what Daniel is saying right
Doing
now.
that in a long time. I wanted to learn other languages. Because the other thing was, a lot of what I was helping people do was free up themselves to go forth and manifest, to be exactly who they wanted to be. And eventually I realized, wait a second, I kind of want to do that too. I want to do more than just spend all my time dealing with healing and grieving and
Yes.
pain and trauma. I want to deal with beauty. I want to deal with all sorts of freedom to try new things and explore and experiment and be in other countries for a long period of time and go see parts of the world that I've never been in. I hadn't seen whole parts of the world, whole continents. So I've gotten to do that. It's been wonderful. It's actually been a really beautiful thing to not be a therapist. And it's also given me a lot of time to really have perspective on what I did. Sometimes I
So I'll stop right there. Yeah. So Daniel's been YouTubing for a while now. Well, actually, I don't know if he's currently doing it. Like I said, this is an older video, but I know he's done a lot more videos than this one. This is definitely one of his earlier ones. But yeah, he made some really good points. I don't agree with all of them, but again, he's obviously an older therapist. Things have changed a little bit since he has been practicing. But again, yeah, I love the fact that he got into other careers because there's a lot you can do with a mental health license, graduate degree. That's just therapy, like, and that's something I'm actually starting to realize now. Like, I'm almost 2 years in as being a professional or mental health licensed professional, and I'm just starting to realize, I don't know if I could be happy even if I had a full caseload of just doing like one-on-one therapy, couples therapy. I mean, like my salary would be good because I'm in private practice and whatnot, but I don't think that would make me happy. So I'm realizing now that I might want to actually start getting into other avenues like supervision, being a mental health professional supervisor, maybe getting into doing more group therapy, or you could be a professor at university or social media like this. There's definitely different avenues that therapists can go to make more money in, and that's something I want really, really want to start promoting to like the younger therapists too. Not only for like financial reasons, just but also for like burnout reasons too, or just interest, like getting into other interests in this field too, type of thing. So anyways, thank you everyone. I'm gonna do more why quit being a therapist series. So this is part two. I might do a few more videos, but obviously on different therapists, maybe more current video. And yeah, that's what I have on the mind right now. But again, thank you. And I'm gonna work on being more consistent with these videos. But please leave your comments down below if you agree with me or if you respectfully disagree with me on some things, or if I missed something, or if you want to tell me your experience on why you quit being a therapist, that's great too. All right. So without further ado, have a good day and I'll talk to you later. Bye.